Okay, let's jump right into the frame tour.
Hey quilters! A couple of weeks ago I had a request for a tour of my DIY quilt frame. This is, well, I can't take responsibility for this. My husband built this quilt frame. I just told him what I wanted and he figured out a way to make it happen, so he is totally responsible for this. But I wanted to go over the materials that we used, where we found them, and why we picked these materials. The quilt frame itself was about $250 at the time for us to build, so it wasn't expensive at all. And I think that this could be a low budget solution for people who want to turn their quilts around quickly and not necessarily send them out. Of course, I have to say, long armors do beautiful work, and it's great when you can send them out. But for me, I just wanted to get them finished and move on to the next thing and have a project absolutely complete. And this is the way I went about that.
For a really long time, this was the type of frame that I use. These are boards wrapped in batting, and then the quilt is pinned to the batting. This was the first little frame build. You'll notice that it's pretty little. It's just sitting on one desk, and I liked it because I could move the desk around and then I could just set the frame on top of it. If you're going to build a big frame, you're going to need a big room to house it. You're also going to need a couple of feet on either side of the room so that you have room to access the machine from the sides. I have this bigger, beefier frame set up between two desks, and there's about a 24-inch gap in the middle, so you really lose some of the lightweight portability that you have with a smaller frame, but what you gain is, of course, you can put a bigger quilt on it.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for more compulsive quilting and embroidery videos.
Alright, so now let's take an overhead view of the platform that sits on the tracks. You'll notice that it looks a little bit overbalanced toward the front, and that's because it doesn't have the weight of the machine on it. This is actually two platforms. One goes in one direction and the other goes in the opposite direction. And that's what gives you that good omnidirectional movement that you're looking for when you're doing free motion on a quilt. Now right here, I'm setting the machine on the platform. As you can see, it jiggles a little bit when you're putting it on, but after you get it adjusted into place, it will be just fine. I have pencil marks there where I like the machine to set when I'm working with it, and I'm just adjusting it into that. Once I've got it adjusted into that, I'll make sure that it's sitting on the tracks in both directions. And you see me adjusting it right there to make sure that it rolls smoothly. So here you see me setting a foot down, and notice that I turn it around so the orientation of the foot is away from you. The next thing I'm going to do is run the cord under, but see, it ran off the tracks right here. That's not normally a problem because right through the throat space there would be a pole running that would prevent that from happening where your quilt is sitting. Your power cord will, of course, hang off the back of your machine, and your foot pedal cord is going to need to be threaded through your machine. So you're going to take it and thread it through, and make sure that you have it where it's not on the tracks where the wheels can run over it, because you don't want to ruin your cord. When you get it through to the other side, you're going to want to bundle it up into just a nice little package there to keep it out of the way of your wheels. Again, notice the orientation of the foot pedal, that the narrow part is away from me and the fatter part is toward me. So that is one thing that you want to keep. And the reason you want it like that is so that you can operate it with your thumbs. So from this position, I can hold on to the sides and I just press down with my thumbs. For this setup, I will position an extension cord halfway down the frame, and that will give the power cord enough room to reach both directions on the frame. This is a view of how the machine platform sits on the rails of the track. Here's another view from the back of the machine platform. You can see along the bottom platform that I've drilled a series of holes. I also have one hole on the top platform. What this does is it gives me a way to have a low-tech channel lock with a peg. This is helpful when I'm trying to stitch a straight line across the length of the quilt. A couple of these little chair pads for your floor can be helpful if you're working on carpet. The rails are made of angle iron. I don't think it's iron, I think it's aluminum. You'll notice that right here I didn't have enough. This is the area where I surface my quilt when I pull it over to the sides, so it really doesn't matter if it is got a little bit of jiggle in the movement there. The poles I use to support the quilt is 1-inch galvanized electrical conduit. For the leaders, snap a chalk line the length of your pole and then use a good strong tape to tape the leaders onto the pole. I use a set of red snappers to secure my quilt to the frame. I bought these little gears at buildaquiltframe.weebly.com and they've been very useful. These on the other side prevent the pole from slipping out of the cradle that it's resting in. Here's a view of what the inside of that looks like. The threaded piece just slides through the holes in the pole. I lift this back bar up and I slide it through the throat space of my machine when I'm loading it onto the platform. You can see right here just how I load the machine on and how quickly you can do that. I have to push the machine platform further toward the other side so that I can lift the pole up to set it in the cradle. These are water shut-off knobs. I use these to adjust and tighten up the cradle that the poles sit on the frame. The wheels are the kind that you use on a sliding glass screen door. Originally, I got this platform from Ken Lund, but he used skateboard wheels on his platform, and I didn't like that kind of execution on mine. It had too much friction for what I wanted to do. The bottom part of the frame is pretty basic, so the only reason that I use 2x4s is because it needed to stretch between two desks.
So I just measured this out, and my quilt frame is 120 inches by 26 inches. And this was determined by the length of my desks, the amount of room that I wanted to stretch between the two of my desks, and also the depth of my desk as far as the width of the frame.
Now here I've used some long pieces of selvage so that I could add tensioners to the side, and I just use a paper clip. This is my low-tech tensioner for my quilt. These will just add a little additional stability along the edge of your quilt as you're working. As you can see here, you'll want to make your tensioners nice and long so that they can fit either a large quilt or a smaller quilt like this one.
So there's one last thing that you might want to consider if you're a frequent mover like me. I just had a walkthrough of my quilt studio with my mover, and I was reminded that my quilt frame will not fit in a standard shipping container that the movers use. And that means that they have to build a special container for me to move my frame in and all of the super long poles that I have. So it's either sell my frame or have a container made for it. And if you're paying for your own shipping, this is something that you might seriously consider, whether you want to keep it or whether you just want to put it on Craigslist and turn it over to another quilter at this time. I hope that this has answered your questions about a DIY quilt frame. If you are planning on doing one of these, I hope that you'd comment and let me know what your plans are for your DIY quilt frame. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for more compulsive quilting and embroidery videos.